Welcome to the American Classroom Podcast. My name is Jared Taylor, the host, and this podcast is to explore the role of education in building a civil society. And today we have an exciting guest that's been here before, and I hope he's going to come back a lot more. Shane Krauser is with us here, and I'm super excited to talk a little bit more about America 250, the semi-quincentennial of America. We're recording this in June of 2026. So we are weeks away, and we wanted to get one more recording from some of our favorite people. And we asked Shane to come on. So Shane, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the work you're doing. This is fantastic.
Now, it's just been fun to see you on the social media pages, because one day you're, on this side of the country, and then that side of the country, and out of the country. Tell us what you've been up to. You are preaching liberty everywhere that...
This has been so much fun. I feel so blessed just to move the message of freedom, more freedom, limited government, a restoration of our Constitution, helping people fall back in love with freedom and the idea of America all over again. So I've been all over the United States, up into Canada, Saskatchewan to Ontario to New Brunswick to Nova Scotia, and then down into Mexico and Peru, and just having an absolute blast. One of the highlights for me has been working with the young people. Mm-hmm. When I say young people, I'm talking about age range from 18 to 30 years old that are just really, they're concerned about the direction of their country, and they want to do something about it. And they recognize that to do something about it, they have to be educated on the right principles, and then have a plan to move that message out to people that they wish to influence, so that the culture can be impacted in positive ways. So I experienced a lot of that down in Peru and Mexico. Just these young people that are excited about liberty and opportunities to talk about the Declaration of Independence and those underlying principles found therein.
Yeah, what are you doing in Canada and Peru? I thought those were socialist countries.
Well, it's interesting. When you have when the boot's on your neck, that can create an awakening. Much like our founders. When you look into the 1750s and 1760s, there's a real awakening that starts to happen when they see government doing things that they have no authority to do. And you see that same thing happening down in Mexico and Peru and Colombia and Venezuela. Venezuela is an excellent example. I mean, just 25, 30 years ago, it was the most prosperous country in all of Latin America. Today, not enough garbage cans to eat out of. At one point, just years ago, they were losing 2,000 people a day to starvation. So when you have something like that happen, you start to analyze what created this. Yeah. And as you recognize what created it, you can start to look for solutions. And I know that the thing that's been such a blessing is to watch young people recognize that freedom is the answer. Freedom's the answer.
It is.
And so there's just something special going on, I believe, right now, not just in America, but throughout the world, as people awaken to the reality of what's going on and start to look for real solutions around freedom.
Yeah, I like that freedom. It's native to humanity.
Yes.
People want to be free. They want to live in a peaceful society, and they want prosperity. And whatever the ethnicity, those are really three things that are just natural to individuals. And it's just sad, when we see these oppressive countries just really take suck the soul out of these people with socialism or whatever version of that, they have in their country.
That's right.
That's one of the whole theories of the American classroom, is that young children want to be free and prosperous. They want to live in a peaceful society. They don't want to, I saw a friend of mine sent a video. She was in Israel, and the video was from a bomb shelter, and people were just kind of, you could hear the sirens, and they were just kind of wandering down, and she was given a little bit of a narrative saying, yeah, this is just kind of how it is living in Israel, where you hear the sirens and you need to go down in the shelters. And I was thinking, good grief.
Wow.
Who wants to live in that kind of a society where, you want a free and prosperous, safe community? But so God love you for going out there and, and helping these young people understand what's going on. And
the one thing that really resonates is when you say human beings desire freedom. That's a self-evident truth. When you look at Thomas Jefferson and what he wrote about in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident. His original statement was actually, we hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable. He was saying these things are beyond debate. These things are obvious. It resonates with all human beings. And of course, a couple of the self-evident truths are, number one, that all men should be equal, men and women should be equal before the law, but also that we're endowed by our Creator, that our freedom exists by virtue of our humanity. We don't get them from government. We don't get them from a piece of paper. We don't even get them from what a majority might say. They're inherent within us. And when you talk about these truths resonating with human beings, that's what we're seeing right now, is throughout the world, as people feel the boot of communism and socialism on their neck, they're recognizing that that's not the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And of course, that was the very reason that impelled the separation from the colonists from Britain, was things were happening and it wasn't the way it was supposed to be. It wasn't consistent with underlying truths that resonate with us all.
It's so interesting that sometimes when people speak like that, it's considered controversial.
Isn't that amazing?
Even though it's self-evident, it is so obvious. Yes, when you say people want freedom.
Yeah, that's right.
People want peace and prosperity. It's like, what?
That's right.
What is so controversial about that?
You know, it's interesting. When I go into play, so I've spoken to hundreds of high schools, and I taught at the collegiate level for well over a decade. And I would often hear students say things like, how can you buy into this document, Declaration of Independence or the Constitution? It was written by individuals who did thus and such. Yeah. They were slave owners or whatever the case may be. And what was so enjoyable for me was taking a deep dive. Say, well, hold on a second. You're claiming they're hypocrites, which we're all hypocrites. We all claim to believe in certain values, but we're not necessarily living up to them. Mm-hmm. But let's look at what was written. Do you believe that all men and women should be equal before the law? Do you believe that government should be able to pick winners and losers? Well, I don't.
No, yeah.
But I believe that we should be equal before the law. And I've never met someone who doesn't agree with that. Well, what's the other self-evident truth? That freedom exists by virtue of humanity, or that you're endowed by your... Everybody agrees with this. Everybody agrees. And so it's interesting that oftentimes we can take the human beings that wrote the document and we say, well, their behavior didn't match the ideals. I'm not arguing about their behavior. I'm arguing about the ideals and whether those are self-evident and whether those are worth defending today. And that's what I love about the 250th, where we're able to be involved in creating that awakening back to those principles that made America unique and exceptional and worth defending.
No, that's great. I love it. Just like the classroom we talk about, it's, a student is not a cup to be filled. It's a candle to be lit.
Yes.
Right? You've heard some versions of that in the past. And thanks for lighting the fire. Shane Krauser is an arsonist of liberty in the world.
That's a first. That is a first. I like it.
So thanks for doing that. Yeah. The official arsonist for liberty.
Well, thank you for doing what you're doing. It's fun to link arms with others who love the idea of liberty, love and appreciate the principle of agency, and want to go out and defend it far and wide. Yeah. From even defending it, from even defending that which many would call our political enemies, if you will. Mm-hmm. This is for everybody. This isn't just for one particular group or one particular faction. This is for all human beings, and I love being on the front lines of defending those ideas.
Yeah, and it's the thing they desire most.
Yes.
For themselves and their families. Okay, so not only are you on a lot of speaking tours, which is great, and congratulations, you've also helped launch Freedom Square USA. And tell us a little bit about that and how maybe what people can learn if they join there.
This is an effort to reach people far and wide, all over the world. And so Freedom Square USA is simply an online platform where people can learn, apply, and advocate. That's the idea. So we have many people that come on and they just want to learn the principles. And others, they're on kind of more extreme, if you will. They want to be advocates for liberty. They want to be more effective in what they feel called to do. And so it runs the gamut. We have mothers, we have individuals that lead various organizations throughout the country and everything in between. And so great. It's been a lot of fun. Just to hold forums, to have weekly gatherings, to allow a community to come together and have rigorous discussions around what it means to be free. And it's just been really satisfying to get that launched.
Well, and that's nice to have a community where you can strengthen each other. Hey, what's going on in Ohio, or what are you doing in Florida? Yeah,
that's exactly right. In fact, Edmund Burke said if you want to restore virtue and freedom, you have to build platoons all over the region where you wish to see that restoration. Mm-hmm. So this is just one of many efforts to build platoons.
Nice.
Wherever an individual is at, that they can rise up, they can learn about the ideas, come together with other folks around the country, even the world, and learn how to become more effective. So it's really, it's a lot of fun. In fact, one of our taglines is not left, not right, just freedom.
Just freedom.
Just freedom. That's what we do. Just freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for everyone. It's
That's
definitely for everyone. Let's see. How do they get to learn more a little bit about Freedom Square?
So freedomsquareusa.com.
That's easy.
freedomsquareusa.com, and they'll jump on and they'll see a little bit about what we do, get a little bit of an introduction, and jump on in with us.
Good. That's great. Okay. Well, we're going to put that in the show notes, and anything else about that you want, because that's all part of it. In fact, some of it will, sometimes teachers like to give extra credit to join some forums like that and contribute or add to the discussions or things like that. Because part of, learning is doing. There's really two sides to actually becoming proficient or fluent in something.
And what you'll see on there is not only do we have weekly learning sessions where I'll get on and I'll teach a principle, and I'll present hypotheticals, and we'll banter back and forth on what the ultimate conclusion should be. But we also have symposiums where we have individuals, we have youth speakers to experts in various areas of freedom, and they're able to learn from some of the best in the country.
That's great.
I'm so excited about it.
That's good. That just launched recently, right?
Not too long ago. Yep. Yeah. So it launched in May of 2026.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Good. So that's good. All right. I'm joining. That's going to be fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, I want to also tee up a question here about how do we think about the American Revolution?
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun thing to think about, since that's really what's on a lot of minds of people. And even right now in June, it's the FIFA World Cup. Have you enjoyed all the social media about these people overseas?
I've watched some of it, and I've loved some of the Cinderella stories that I'm uncovering. It's been, in some respects, amazing. But I think what you're referring to is some of the social media with regard to individuals in America experiencing things that they didn't expect to experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that fun or what?
That is so much fun. Because they were sold a certain narrative about what America looks like, how the people are, and then they come here and experience it for themselves. And wait, these are some of the nicest people in the world.
Wait, we're supposed to be oppressors.
That's right.
We're oppressors.
That's right.
We're bad, evil, nasty, and we're selfish. And wait, they're actually nice.
Yeah, they're nice. And wait a second. Here's what capitalism will do. Here's what happens when you get the government off the neck of the people. There's innovation. There's prosperity. And I remember hearing one about ranch. The ranch, right? The ranch dressing.
Okay.
And people were fascinated by it. They were actually putting it in their suitcases to take back to their country. They were so fascinated by it. But I think that's really cool that they're able to come and see the idea of freedom on display.
Yeah.
And really, you hope that it plants some seeds, regardless of where they come from, whether they come from a communist country or a country that's deeply entrenched in socialism, that it plants a seed to get them thinking differently about what the ideal of America actually looks like. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we are on the road that's consistent with what Jefferson talked about in the Declaration, but we'll never abandon the foundation of what we stand for. And I think that's the great thing about the 250th, is that we get to reignite that flame, if you will, that brings people back to how it all began. What does this American experiment even mean? And what are we talking about? What are the results?
Yeah, it's fast. And because it's so much more than fascinations of, the governor showing up at the opening of a new gas station in Arizona. Or it's like, that's the symbol of capitalism right now, is Buc-ee's opening up. Or, the Japanese people experiencing barbecue for the first time in Texas or wherever they got it. It's like, there's so much more to it. But
that's right.
Those are the fruits of
of
these foundations that we want to talk about. But okay, well, let me read a quote here from John Adams. And we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but I want to bring it up and get a little more specific. So John Adams, of course, one of the pillars of the America 250 years. And I hope people don't forget about John Adams. He doesn't have any statues or memorials or anything. And he's a little bit obnoxious, but no doubt a key figure in the semi-quincentennial. He talked about how the American Revolution really took place in the minds and hearts of the people. And he broke it out into a couple of interesting key words that I'd love for you to expand on. He said a radical change in the principles, opinions, sentiments, and affections of the people was the real American Revolution.
Yeah.
So if you think about, let's say principles, change in principles. If you think of the colonial experience, what do you think the principles were that started to change in their hearts and minds? Because it's, in my mind, the American Revolution is kind of like a divorce in some ways.
Yes, absolutely.
The Declaration was the divorce papers,
Yeah.
right? But when someone gets a divorce and files, the truth is the divorce happened years prior, right? The divorce is just the paperwork, the actual date of it. But years prior, the man or the woman in that relationship had distanced themselves. They changed their priorities and things like that. Same thing in the colonies. There was a change in the sentiments, and this is what Adams is pointing out in the principles and the opinions and sentiments. But principles, what kind of principles, as you think about that, come to mind?
Well, I mean, it's the self-evident truths that I alluded to a little bit earlier, where they're talking about where freedom ultimately comes from. That it's not the divine right of kings. It's not an individual who wins a revolution and then claims that he was the leader of the revolution. Now everyone else is going to follow orders, and if you don't follow orders, people die. Mm-hmm. You think about what went on for thousands of years prior to 1776. How were people governed? Lords, czars, thugs, kings. Mm-hmm. That was the status quo, is someone rose up and everyone else followed orders. And suddenly the founders come together. And of course, they were influenced by many individuals. They were great students and recognized something that was a self-evident truth, and that is the inherent freedom of the individual. And, one of the things, Jared, that I love to talk about on this concept of how the principles really brought about different results is just, your listeners can just do this on their own and do it with their kids, their grandkids. Go on to ChatGPT or Grok and just do a little thought experiment here. Ask Grok, what sort of advances did we see in transportation technology from 3000 BC to 1700 AD? The answer is almost none. The way that individuals got around in 3000 BC is very similar to the way they got around in 1700 AD. It was either they walked or an animal, and eventually that animal would be hooked to a sled or some sort of
cart.
Some sort of cart. But then here's the magnificent thing. 1776 comes around. These ideals are solidified. A constitution comes about a little bit more than a decade later, and 130 years later, we're flying airplanes. That is a product of the ideals. When you leave people alone, when you have a government that gets out of the way, either intentionally or accidentally, prosperity is about to happen. And this is exactly what we saw. So we go from riding horse and buggies for thousands of years to flying airplanes inside of 130 years of this experiment. It's absolutely amazing. So when John Adams talks about these principles, it's important to understand what principles we're talking about, namely getting government out of the way. Government has a specific role. Individuals are inherently free. To what are the results that came about as you allowed individuals to experience those self-evident truths. It really is fascinating.
Yeah, and there certainly was a division. There was people in King's College at the time. They were still, very loyal to the crown, the Tories. But there were others, whether it was in the South in Virginia, that had over a couple generations experienced freedom. Even though there may have been some loyalty to the crown early on,
Right.
It seemed to have waned. But, they in Williamsburg, they were able to self-govern. And they realized, kind of like this.
Yes.
And you know what? We're kind of smart too. And why are we,
Right.
Lord Dunmore, right? The governor over, does he really know what he's doing? They were just given these lordships or governorships because of their genetics or some pedigree rather than some
right.
qualification. So here you had George Wythe and Jefferson and, these geniuses of their time. Just kind of question, what is this? Why is this?
Yeah,
really
the thought that comes to mind as you bring that up is the principle of salutary neglect. Salutary neglect is this idea that when government indeed gets out of the way, either intentionally or accidentally or because they're compelled to, amazing things happen. The spirit of the human starts to thrive in unprecedented ways. And so, you see individuals for centuries stepping into a governmental position, and then suddenly, as you mentioned, you have in the colonies, individuals are experiencing unprecedented freedom. And a big reason for that is government had gotten out of the way. And when government starts to get in the way again, as you move into the 1760s, 1770s, right, as a result of the French Indian War, is really where Britain starts to become aggressive and, hey, you're going to pay for this. And they impose all these different taxation schemes. Enough is enough. We need a voice, and we don't have a voice, right, in government as you make these decisions, impose them on us. And you're not honoring an essential component of what legitimate government looks like, and you're infringing on our freedom. And that was enough to impel these individuals to really create a revolution.
Taxation without representation.
Right.
Well, and I think people need to realize that, and I know I'm stating the obvious for people that know their history, but there's a lot that don't, which is why we have this, is that, the American Revolution was really a byproduct of education. We call it the Enlightenment period, but people were educated and they were highly literate. There's some studies that show there's higher literacy rates during that time than today. It's not that they were a bunch of Neanderthals. It was they were educated and they did understand principles that are superior over others, right? Freedom is superior over slavery or the master-servant relationship, which they had largely from the king and the crown.
Yeah.
God save the queen, all that nonsense. Like,
that's
really,
exactly
what's the point of that?
Jared, you're right on with regard to education. I know this is something you and I have talked at length about over the many, many years that we've known each other. Thomas Jefferson told us what the solution is. When you look at the direction our country's going, and if you're concerned about that, you have to ask the question, what is the solution? Well, we don't need to invent the solution. We've been there, done that. We know the answer. Yeah. Jefferson told us, educate the people, and tyranny will vanish like evil spirits at the break of dawn. He also told us that a society that wishes to be ignorant and free desires something that never was and never will be. So notice that he didn't say, if you just get the right congressman in office, if you just get the right mayor, if you just get the right guy in the executive office, tyranny will vanish like evil. He didn't say that. Yeah. He said education, because if you have a society that thrives on the principles of freedom, the only way that it sustains itself is by individuals, a society being actively engaged in protecting those things, because the natural state of man is tyranny. Yeah. That's where we've been for centuries and centuries, is tyranny. And so to actually preserve freedom and bring about freedom, you have to have real education and understand what it is where we came from, what it is that we're fighting for, and what we wish to reinstill.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Somebody mentioned this the other day. In the discussion about the Great Seal years ago, I think it was John Adams or John Quincy Adams. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but he proposed some imagery that was about, I think it was Hercules at the crossroads. And the story is it's one of these Greek myths about Hercules came to a crossroads. And you can Google this and see the imagery. It's all over the place. But Hercules had a choice, which he just said, it's a choice of all mankind. You have this beautiful woman over here that was the symbol of entertainment and lust and ease and all that stuff, all the vices that man knows. And then the other choice was another woman who looked a little hardened, looked a little more modest, but it was a symbol of the virtues. Mm-hmm. And Adams was arguing that this would be a great symbol of America, because every American has to make that choice. Mm-hmm. Am I going to go down the path of virtue or vice?
Yes.
And eventually we went to the eagle with the wings and the talons and all that stuff. And that's a little easier in the mind. But when you bring that up, I mean, the educated person has to make that decision. Do I want to go down this path of virtue, which ultimately leads to life, liberty, wealth, prosperity, and peace, or this one of vice, which ultimately leads to slavery and oppression and bondage?
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson, I really love that image of what you just outlined. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about Thomas Jefferson giving us the choice. He says, we have to make a choice. What do we prefer? Mm-hmm. Dangerous freedom or peaceful slavery? And of course, that dovetails on this idea that our founders talked about quite often, that we have a constitution, and that constitution is designed to solidify the principles that were enshrined in the Declaration of Independence. But you can only have a moral and virtuous people. If we want freedom to survive, if we want it to be a real thing, you have to have a moral and virtuous people, because as people become more immoral and lack virtue, government now intervenes at a higher level. Because when you have bad people doing bad things, government is now stepping in to try and stop bad people from doing all these bad things, and ultimately freedom is infringed upon. So I prefer dangerous freedom, but at the same time, I prefer a moral and virtuous people that are willing to live their lives in a way, number one, as they see fit, but is in line with just being a good human being. That's how freedom really thrives at a high level, is people being good human beings, leaving other people alone as they decide to live their lives in any particular way, and together protecting the principles of liberty.
Yeah, and that's an interesting irony about prosperity, is it leads to so much discretionary time and money, and people don't know how to do, what do you do when you have extra time, right? Do you find someone to serve, or do you find yourself, ways to entertain yourself, or
Right.
we have that crossroads every single time. And it's an interesting thing I think our country still struggles with, because we have so much discretionary time and money on our hands.
Yeah.
We just want to entertain ourselves to death.
And of course, the flip side of that is you have individuals that are watching the prosperity. And so there's this element of envy as well, that we say, hey, well, you need to pay your fair share. That's kind of a common mantra right now, is you're seeing individuals that have taken the principles of freedom, have gone out and brought something of value to our society. And then you have individuals on the outside looking in saying, well, we should take those things away that they earned. No, that's antithetical to freedom.
Yeah.
Right? So long as there is a voluntary exchange, we should protect that voluntary exchange. And if you don't like the fact that someone has a lot of money and you envy that, you go out and produce yourself. Right? That's the beautiful thing around freedom. Hard work brings about great results, but in a free society, we don't allow people to take away the fruits of someone else's labor.
Yeah. So just getting back to the American Revolution, in terms of what was changing in their hearts and minds, their sentiment of the people and the affections of the people. You think about their affection to the king, the crown, all that. A lot of the people, especially those in the South to some extent, and then in the North for religious reasons, were really here because they were not of the wealthy class, in England and Europe. They were here because they didn't have any place to go, and this was their way to do. Some came over as indentured servants, others came as explorers, others came for religious liberty, mostly in the North, the Pilgrim Puritan experience. But in all cases, they came because they needed a better life. The people that thought they had it good and really were part of the favored class, they stayed in England, and they're like, hey, we have our nose in the trough, and we're getting what we want to have from the crown. And so all these people came over. And so I think part of what they experienced was they had some taste of freedom, and then they got to work. They got some prosperity. Certainly it wasn't easy, but their affections started to change over the generations, from the 1600s into the 1700s, from, hey, we can actually do our own thing. And the crown, we don't need to rely on the crown for everything. But it's just a great thing. Yeah. And then, of course, like you said, when the oppressions of the crown really came in, they're like, no, wait a minute.
When you juxtapose liberty and tyranny, it's rather interesting. When you sing the song of liberty, people tend to sing it with you. And here you had, along the Atlantic seaboard, individuals singing the song of liberty with more precision and with loudness than had ever been done before. And it really is an amazing intellectual revolution that's happening there that was unprecedented. And, I look at my own family. My mother immigrated here from Europe in the late 1940s and came here for some of the very same ideas that many of the founders came to the Atlantic seaboard in the 16 and 1700s. Something about freedom. And when someone begins to sing that song, when a group of people begins to allow individuals to really experience at a high level, everybody wants to come. Everyone wants to be a part of it. So we're seeing that even today, right? People want to experience freedom. And of course, we're losing a sense of real freedom. I mean, you look at America today, I'm concerned about the direction we're going. We still have the underpinnings of freedom, but we have a warped opinion as a general society on what it really means to be free. And so it's really going back to that founding era that John Adams is talking about, a change in the sentiment of the people, right? What was that sentimental change? And it really was I know I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but it really was the idea of liberty. Leave people alone, let them prosper, let them decide how they want to live their own lives, because you and I can live our own lives better than government can. And it was that very idea that was so revolutionary.
Well, and we hope in the American classroom that, the young people will really understand the principles. We talk about the principles of liberty all the time, and but why obviously we should know that, and John Quincy Adams says we should keep it in front of us all the time.
Yeah.
Right? He harkens back to some biblical things about how we should always remember. But why do we do all that? And for us, the idea is once you understand a principle of liberty or a principle of anything, a principle of chemistry, a principle of mathematics, then you can actually know if a math problem supports or violates that principle. So take a principle, all men are created equal in the Declaration. Once a young person understands that, in the American classroom, they should not just understand it, but understand the case studies where in America, we have supported that or violated that principle. And you get a little bit of reps in there. Then when you see news or when you see bills in the legislature or some politician yammering about, their next, their favorite corporate welfare scheme that's going to produce economic development, you can say, wait a minute, does that support or violate the principle we know that helps us to be free of all men are created equal? If you're going to do this corporate welfare scheme here to help, or this individual welfare scheme, that's creating inequality in our country. And so we hope that, in this year and in other years, really people to understand those principles that, like the family is the basis of a prospering society, right? There's another principle, right? That and government's role is to protect the integrity of the family. There's another one there. And there's many, many principles that I hope the American classroom understands, and you're just doing great in your speaking assignments, both in class. You're in a lot of classroums too.
Yeah,
and with a lot of young people. So
well, and it's a lot of fun. And what you just said, Jared, was so well said. You hear all the time in America that individuals are concerned about the direction that our country is going, and we can yell and scream all we want, but we have to know what we're trying to return to. What are we trying to reinstate? And so when you talk about principles, it's not enough to say, I don't like where we're going as a country. You have to just, with the same amount of vigor, be able to say, here's where we need to go. Here's what I'm fighting for. And many folks don't know that. And so I love that the American classroom is really focused on teaching the ideals so that when individuals analyze what's happening in their city, what's happening in their county, state, federal level, they understand the litmus test of what government should be doing, what is their proper role.
Right.
And even if government, this is just as important, even if government is operating in its proper role, doesn't necessarily mean that government should be doing it. Because if there's better alternatives within the private sector, well, we should have the private sector do it.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's one thing we often miss as well. But you're exactly right. We have to create a generation that understands what freedom looks like and how to analyze the issues of the day socially, politically, economically, so that we know here's where here's where we want to return, here's what we're ultimately protecting.
And so they don't get fooled.
Right.
I mean, the salesmen for things that will put people in bondage and slavery and all those vicious parts of life, they're really good salespeople.
Yeah. Well, you look at Frederick Bastiat, The Law. It's such a good book. It identifies why do government actors typically and historically behave the way that they do, and why do most people support it? Well, on the one hand, people want the path of least resistance. On the other hand, those in government want more power. And so the struggle is this that the law talks about. How can I get my politician to raid the public treasury for my benefit? That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And
Big
so
time.
what do we love more? Do we love freedom? Or are we looking just for the easiest route possible, which oftentimes requires taking away some to give to others, which jeopardizes everybody's freedom? What do we want is ultimately what we have to grapple with.
Well, Shane, this is fun. We can go on, and we have in the past too.
Yes, we have.
How's your family going to celebrate the semi-quincentennial this year?
Oh, man, we have so many exciting things. You know, we opened up Brooker's Founding Flavors, the ice cream shop. We have a big event happening there all throughout that week. I'll be in Nova Scotia the week after the 4th, working with some Liberty folks up there. And got some other trips planned, but we're just, as a family, we always enjoy this holiday. Just a chance to have great conversations, a chance to link arms with not just family members, but with others, and remember how and why we're so blessed, because we are blessed. I tell my kids all the time, you won the lottery by virtue of being born here in America, and I just want to continue to remember that myself, but also help others remember that in the process. So the 250 is just a great time to help bring people back to those ideas and help them remember, what was sacrificed, what was given up for us to be able to experience the things that we experience.
That's great. Well, thank you. Thanks for being on American Classroom, and I hope that people have gotten a lot out of what they've heard today and some ideas to help them in their classroom. If you're a classroom teacher or a school leader, why it's so important to make sure that founding principles are in it. And if you want more of this content, we're going to have in the show notes the Liberty Square link and other great things that Shane Krauser is doing around the U.S. So, Shane, thank you. Please tell your good wife and family hello and happy America 250.
Hey, same to you. Thank you so much, Jared.
If you like this episode, please like and share with someone who would find this interesting. We appreciate you listening to the American Classroom podcast today.
Thank you.
American Classroom is brought to you by Heritage Academy Mesa. Heritage Academy in Mesa, Arizona is a public charter school serving grades 7 through 12. Youth that come to Heritage are not just students, but scholars who are taught by the #1 rated faculty in Arizona. If you'd like to learn more about Heritage Academy Mesa, please visit heritageacademyaz.com and click Mesa.